Welcome to SVG Europe Women Virtual Motorsport Special. I hope you and your families are all well. Today we're going to be talking to the women behind and in front of the camera in motorsports about what goes on behind the racing scenes, the specialist skills this genre of sport requires, the challenges of working in this extreme world, and what it takes to bring the raw and lots of engine noises to our TVs. Before I introduce my speakers, please remember to post your questions for them in the Q&A facility. You can use the chat facility to chat to each other and talk, but please use the Q&A facility to put your questions in. It's much easier for me at the end of this session to pick them out there. Without further ado, please welcome Wendy Hendrickx, Formula One Head of TV Production, Lara Bishop, Head of Production for Formula E at Aurora Media Worldwide, James-Munoz, Production Manager for Extreme E at Aurora Media Worldwide, Claire Downey, Broadcast Technical Manager for Formula E at Aurora Media Worldwide as well, Aurora everywhere, and last but not least, Abby Stevens, Speedway and World Rally Championship Motorsport presenter. And Abby will be presenting this afternoon's SVG Europe Motorsport show. So if you want to register for that and you haven't yet, just email me and I'll get you in. My registration is probably going, oh no, right now, but don't worry, just send me a message. Okay, hi everybody.
Hi, Ella.
Good morning.
Hello. Right, so let's start. So first of all, so we can set the scene, I'd like to find out what your roles entail in motorsports. So let's go around all of you just briefly. So Abby, over to you first.
Yeah, so thank you for the introduction. I am a motorsport presenter. I'm a sports broadcaster, but I work heavily in the motorsport arena. So it started off with Sky Sports in 2007, reporting on Speedway. So I'm almost come full circle because I'm now presenting Speedway on Eurosport. And in between, it has been a host of different motorsport disciplines, from drag car racing on Channel 5, Formula Ford on Channel 4, ESPN, I did Super League Formula, and then I presented MotoGP on BT Sport, MotoGP on Talk Sport, and did a magazine show on BT Sport called Motorsport Tonight. And also, as you said, WRC, the World Rally Championship, I present that for the WRC OTT provider, as well as a highlights program for ITV.
Cool, been everywhere. It's great. I love it. And over
not Formula E though. So it's nice to be with all the Formula E beats.
And there's Extreme E as well, so you can.
Yeah.
Go on. And Wendy, what about you?
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Heather. I'm the head of TV production at Formula One Management. I'm actually leading a team of 25 staff, and that grows until about 85 over a race weekend. 50% is based at the track, 50% is based at our Media and Technology Center in Biggin Hill. Mm-hmm. We are producing the world feed for Formula One and all the additional content for the international broadcasters and for F1 TV.
Wow, cool. And I understand you're in a lot of meetings and pre-race stuff right now, aren't you?
Yes, that's correct. We're in the middle of a triple header at the moment. And it started this morning. We have our testing day today. We have the high-speed track test this afternoon. And this is basically the day where we test all the systems to go into the weekend.
And you've taken an hour out to be with us, so thank you for that.
No worries.
Lara, what about you?
So I'm the head of production for Formula E TV. We're a co-production between Aurora Media Worldwide and North One Television, and we provide the international programme, the English language programme, sports presentation, and then we work with the partners and the teams as well across the Formula E ecosystem. So I manage the production management team, got a fab PM, JPM coordinator, production secretary, and then oversee kind of the liaison into Formula E. A bit like Formula One, we are split between international and UK. So we have a UK broadcast centre at Timeline Television in Ealing, and then we have our broadcast centre on site.
Cool. And I understand you're rather jet lagged at the moment.
I am. I'm not used to the travel anymore because we haven't done long haul since Mexico last year, which was March. So you kind of get in the rhythm, and I came back 2 days ago and it's absolutely wiped me.
From sunny Mexico as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Claire, what about you? You're also jet lagged.
Yeah, apologies for the bags under the eyes. It's been a while. I am a technical broadcast manager working on the Formula E. I work with Lara. I've only been doing it since February, so this is my first season on the job. And my role, along with the technical director, is to make sure that everyone has all of the technical tools they need to get on air and to a good quality. Everything from the power and the TV compound layout right the way through to where we're going to put the cameras on the circuit and anything that breaks or comes up during the week.
Cool. Excellent. And Jenny?
Oh, couldn't find the mute there. Hi, Heather.
Hello.
So yeah, I'm Jenny. I'm production manager on Extreme E. For those of you who don't know about Extreme E, it's a new racing series. It races electric SUVs competing in extreme environments around the world. So we race in 5 locations across the season, and each location's been damaged or affected by environmental issues, which we highlight. And we currently have 9 teams with a male and female driver in each team, and they each race a lap with a driver switch. So yeah, Extreme E's always been planned to be without spectators to minimise local impact. So we have minimal crew on the ground, about 40 people on the ground, and then 30 people in a remote gallery in London. So I oversee all of that, kind of look after logistics, health and safety, COVID protocols and schedules. And we kind of work across multiple roles on the ground as well, and obviously be the face of the operation with, and main point of contact between the event and the broadcast. And I also work really closely with teams and partners to understand their content and filming needs.
Cool. Yeah, and there's an excellent documentary style video coming up this afternoon about Extreme E, about how the whole thing's made. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. So our next question is, motorsports are the classic male fan area. I mean, you've got, like many others, football is, rugby is, but this is engines and petrol and all that kind of grease stuff is such a boy thing. You know, girls don't get dirty, boys do. Boys play with engines and take things apart. Girls play with dolls and put them to bed. So how did you lot get into this area? What drew you in, or was it by accident? So starting with Claire, as you're the most technical of all of my guests today, how did you get into your role?
To be honest, I don't find working in motorsport any different to any of the other sports that I've worked on. They're all pretty male-dominated, to be honest. I've always wanted to work in sport. It's never really been a thing for me to work in entertainment. And then I sort of stumbled into broadcast. I actually did sports science at uni, so it's a bit of a switch from working in a lab to working on a TV compound. And previous to this role, I worked in a similar role, but on women's tennis, which was really challenging, but you are kind of always filming the same size tennis court. But when this job came up at Aurora, it just seemed like the perfect fit because, you know, you're using street circuits, every race is different, every race has different challenges, still traveling, even bigger crew. So it's a really good sort of learning role as well as being pretty damn challenging at times.
Brilliant. And Jenny, over to you.
I started my career in music TV, so I worked at the BBC for many years and worked on the broadcast of events like Glastonbury and Radio 1's Big Weekend, and then worked on a few music documentaries in the Brits, but I really missed kind of working on a live OB on location in the middle of nowhere in a muddy field, and kind of the hands-on experience it brought. So I just thought sports would be a natural progression, really, and you know, it's got international broadcast worldwide, so it just it really excites me. I wasn't really a motorsports fan before I started working in Formula E, but I think once you get to know the characters and the drivers, you just get really hooked on it, especially with Extreme E. I mean, it's got champions from all different types of motorsports. It's just so diverse and inclusive. I think it kind of exposes to a wider audience, and the racing's just really awesome as well.
It is. And Lara, what about you?
Yeah, mine was by accident. I didn't intentionally come over to motorsport. I started my career in studio management and worked on studio shows, then did a bit of factual, and then kind of worked my way into large scale, quite challenging outside broadcasts. And I was working for North One, who are our co-producer on the Formula E series. And when my job came up, Neil Duncanson, who's the CEO over there, put me forward to Lawrence Duffy, who's the CEO of Aurora, and the rest is history. So I've been at Aurora for nearly 3 years now. My first full-time job. Up until that, I was completely freelance. And prior to that, my only other sporting job was on the Asian Games in Turkmenistan, which is still to date one of the most challenging productions I've ever worked on. But yeah, so that kind of like Claire, you know, we work in motorsport, but you know, she loves sport, and I kind of fell into it. But also, like Jenny, I've grown to love Formula E and the characters and the racing. And actually, although I wasn't into motorsport before, I now massively am. So
yeah. And Wendy, what about you?
Well, actually, I was in sports broadcasting all my career. I started working in Belgium for a broadcaster and then moved to the Netherlands. I started working there for a production company. I've been on and off in the slipstream of Formula One because as a producer or working for a production company, you're depending on the media rights that your client obtains. So if my client had the F1 broadcast rights, I was working for them and doing F1, but I did a lot of other sports, football and tennis, cycling, Olympic Games, World Cups, football, Euros, a lot of different things. And I made a jump to Formula One last year in January. That was after just before COVID happened, and that was actually after an 8-month recruiting process.
Wow, yeah, that's heavy. That's a long time to work your way through, but cool. Yep. And Abby.
Well, like I suppose the other women on this call, it's a bit of a mixture, a bit of falling into it by chance, motorsport rather than sport, but not, now looking back, I can sort of join the dots. So I knew I wanted to present sport. I'd always played a load of competitive sports, and that just felt my arena. Motorsport happened a little bit on a whim, on that there was a really last minute reporting position going at the Sky Sports Speedway. I think a couple of weeks before the start of the season. And it was just to cover a maternity slot. And it was the first time in the pits with the sound of the engines with a director talking in my ear. I thought, what is going on? I was trying to lip read. It was all just crazy, but I knew then that felt the right world for me to be in. But now if I look back, I go, of course, it kind of makes sense. My brother raced motocross. I used to go to Speedway with my granddad in Poole, which is a big Speedway town. And yeah, like I say, that kind of fast pace, high adrenaline probably suits my personality and my presenting style. So a bit of both.
Cool. Roar of engines. That must be amazing. I went to, oh God. What's the one where they drag race? Yeah, I went to a drag racing thing. The first thing I heard was the sound. The sound was like, oh my God, I just I couldn't move. I just stood still. I didn't know what to do with myself. You know, Santa Pod.
The sound of racing with Santa Pod, that's on a different scale. That kind of reverberates through your whole body.
I just froze solid. I didn't move. You know, I was like, didn't know what was happening. It was really cool, really, really cool. Okay, so motorsports, very specific genre of sports broadcasting. So Wendy, let's go to you. How do you see what you do in Formula One differing from your equivalent in other sports? You've had a lot of experience in other sports to be able to compare, you know, what's specific to your role and what do you have to bring to the party to make your job work in Formula One?
Yeah, that's a very hard question, to be honest, because there are a lot of similarities in sports broadcasting. It doesn't really matter what you are registering, if it's football, tennis or cycling or rugby. I don't know anything about rugby, by the way, but we all have cameras, we all have replays, we all have graphics, we have our producers, our directors, we have to deal with connectivity. I think for Formula One, it is the massive scale and the pace we have to work in. That is very different to any other production I've worked in before. I think I can say that we produce a Champions League final every 2 weeks, and sometimes in a back-to-back situation, or like this these times in a triple header. Mm-hmm. and we do that like on different locations around the world. So it's not just the football stadium where you have everything close together. I think Claire touched briefly on that as well. And to give you a bit of an idea of what we are working with is we have up to 30 track cameras. So that's only the cameras that are positioned around the track. We use 3 pit wall cameras. We have 5 RF cameras in the pit lane. We have 2 roaming cameras. They're just roaming around. We have a helicopter. Special cameras in curbstones or in walls or in Aramco. We have special cameras on 2 of the teams in the garages, for example. We have onboard cameras. Our onboard cameras goes up to 3 cameras per car. We have 360-degree onboard cameras, which we currently don't use in the live production, but we use it in post-production. So there's a lot of things going on. Then we also provide bespoke systems for the data, the telemetry that the teams use, because without us being there, there's no race. And we have a big production on our team radio, which is getting more vital these days during races. I think last weekend in France was a good example how big the role was for our team radio messages that we put out during the race. And on average, we reach like 87 million viewers per race, and that's about 170 territories around the globe. So it's quite a lot. So I think that is the main difference for me. And in the meantime, with my team, we try to produce a world-class product. It needs to live up to the standards of our international broadcasters, but we also try to innovate. And there's not a lot of time in between races to do that. So yeah, there's a lot going on, and currently we are preparing for Silverstone, for example, where we will introduce our new sprint race concept. Yeah, and longer term, we're also we have a big shopping list at Formula One. So we are looking at a lot of new innovations. We are trying to get a new production suite built here in MNTC, in our main hub. But we're also doing tests for HDR, bringing on team pit wall cameras, for example, next generation of high motion cameras, virtuals, well, you name it. It's quite a lot. Driver biometrics, something we're looking at the moment. So yeah, it's quite a big challenge.
Quite a big challenge, yeah. I like that. Yeah, quite a big challenge. There's quite a lot of things going on. So also, viewers, I have a 7-month-old bull terrier puppy who is now roaming around the house. So if I have to get up suddenly, just ignore me. I'll be back. Okay, so Abby, over to you now. You've presented on a number of different sports, including MMA. How do you have to think and work when presenting for MotoGP and British Speedway compared to how you would present other work, such as MMA?
Yeah, I would agree with Wendy in that there are similarities. With sport, there is a level of unpredictability that you have to be totally ready for. You can't rely on sort of auto cue or a lovely running order that can go by the wayside. The difference, I would say, is that specifically for something like the World Rally Championship is I've had to develop a bit of endurance. It starts on a Thursday, 300 and plus kilometers later, it finishes on the Sunday. And for the WRC OTT All Live, it does what it says on the tin. We're all live for crazy hours from when they go out for their first morning service, which can be around sort of 5:36 to when they come back in the evening. So the times when I've done a lovely 1 hour pre-recorded show for BT Sport in the past, in the studio and hair and makeup and it's all choreographed. This is having to just pace myself, which is really handy as a skill for a presenter, because you can't step in, you're not afforded to step into a role where I'm going to be, what you imagine yourself as a presenter to be, and really vivacious, and you've got to kind of live with that rally as it goes over a number of days. So I'd say that has been one of the major changes, and just hearing what Lara and Jenny said. I think the other challenge is what people love about sport and how we get hooked is when we start following the people involved and we care about personalities and characters. So my role there as a presenter is to bring out those stories. And with motorsports, I've just got to get behind the helmet. You know, there's an easier sort of, put the visor down. It almost gives them a little armory where I want to keep revealing and keep telling those stories. So it's not allowing that now they're in the car or now they're behind a helmet on a bike. It's making sure that we still absolutely care about the human behind the helmet. So that's just an opportunity with motorsports, which is possibly more readily available when you've just got the person coming out of a ring or a cage if it's MMA. So I would say there's major similarities, but just those little nuances. Hi, Basil. What does Basil think? And the other thing is, this is a ridiculous thing to say, but women might appreciate it as well, is just being super confident that, like Jenny said, I can be often in the middle of nowhere in a muddy field, and to roll with that, and that to be part of the whole story, and not think that it has to be, or I have to look really polished. And if that means I'm wearing 10 layers because I'm in Sweden presenting the winter WRC rally, you know, that's all part of the storytelling, rather than letting go of it having to look a certain way in order to be the storyteller, I suppose.
Brilliant, thank you. And sorry, I now have a co-presenter.
So cute.
Good boy. Okay, sorry, threw me. I say now. Thank you, Abby. Now, Claire. So technically, what does Formula? Oh God, what does Formula E? What does Formula E demand that is unique from other sports? So technically, Formula E is obviously electric. It's different. It's hard work.
It is challenging. I mean, as Wendy laid out the cameras and stuff, our requirements are pretty similar. We have a very similar number of cameras and where they're placed. The problem for us is that the majority of the tracks are street circuits. So we're relying on sort of closing the roads to run cables and put cameras out. You know, it really has to be quite last minute at times, which is a challenge. Also, because of the nature of the racing, we really like to have cameras quite low down and close to the cars. Wide angle shots just don't work for us. Yeah. So trying to get those in position around buildings and giving the right line of sight for the director to use is pretty challenging. Like, for example, this season we were lucky enough to do the full Monaco track, which is very, very similar to the ones that Formula One use. It's a very long circuit. It has a lot of very tall buildings, and trying to get the radio frequencies around that track for all of the onboard cameras through tunnels and everything was quite a step up from some of the shorter circuits we run. Another good example is at the Rome event, we use CamCat, which is a 800 meter long wire cam that can keep up with the cars and pan, zoom and tilt like any other camera. Gives some really amazing shots, but in Rome, in order to get that away, we had to attach it to not one but two listed buildings. So trying to get that sorted from the production management team, thankfully I didn't have to touch that too much, was interesting.
Do the crowds get in the way as well? Because people want to watch, and if you're trying to set up cameras and you've got to.
Yeah, obviously this season we haven't had too many crowds. Mexico was our first one where we had up to 11,000 spectators a day, and trying to find the right shot that really shows the crowd getting involved it is important to the brand. So and where those stands are placed. So Puebla was actually a standard circuit rather than a street race, but the street race ones. Yeah, grandstands aren't necessarily always in the perfect position that we'd like.
Oh, how dare they? It's just so unfair. Thanks, Jenny. And Lara, your job at Formula E also must be pretty full on. So what specifically do you have to bring to your role for motorsports to get the productions running smoothly?
I think the biggest thing is a calm head and adaptability. As Claire's touched upon, we race on street circuits. Things get closed last minute. Things change all the time. I've got an amazing production management team, and Carla Murphy, who's my production manager, does the day-to-day, and she was the one dealing with the CamCat permits, luckily. But, it is just trying to bring people together. We work crazy hours, lots of tired people and tired crew, and morale we're a fantastic team. We're very close. A lot of us have been there for a while. We have a team that have been there since season 1. But I'd say, the biggest thing is trying to not get too stressed when things change at the last minute, or you've got to there is every single race. Jenny Fuller, who's the senior broadcast manager over at Formula E, it's similarly, we all work together as a team, but there are curveballs that come at us that we just don't even, we can't foresee what is going to come at us. In Puebla, having just got back, we had a lot of sickness amongst the crew because of obviously the food hygiene standards in Mexico aren't that great. So every day, there'd be someone at the hotel and you'd be trying to juggle people around to make sure that you're covered. Claire was helping in the production management team because, on Sunday, our poor production secretary came down with it. So Claire was printing off, return documents for travel. So, yeah, I think everyone mucking in, calm head and adaptability are the key things, that our team needs to bring to the table.
And one thing I want to add is, we've got 3 women here from Aurora. You guys have quite a good sort of, there's a good gender split going on there.
Yeah, we in the company, we're pretty much 50-50 as a company. Obviously, our crews, there's still a lot of work to be done. And I've made it my personal mission, along with Jenny and Seb's support over at Formula E, to bring more females in, Claire being one of them. And when I started, we had no female engineers. We now have a female NCAM engineer. We have female dyno ops, we have female camera operators. There's still nowhere near a 50-50 split, but it's a lot better than it was, and we're still working to get more.
Cool. Excellent. And Jenny, so Extreme E is a brand new motorsport, very exciting. It's broadcast almost like an e-sport as well with the graphics that you guys are using. How have you helped to get it on air, and what's been the process in the run-up to bringing a brand new type of race onto screens, especially during a pandemic? Jenny? Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me? Sorry about that. My internet just dropped out. Can you hear me now?
Oh, I can. I'll ask the question again. So you're working on a brand new motorsport.
Apologies.
That's okay. That's fine. But yeah, so what was the process for you for getting this brand new motorsport to air during a pandemic as well? But it must be a really interesting experience. No one's ever seen it before. No one knows what it is.
Yeah, so putting together a never been done racing concept in locations with little or no infrastructure, and then throwing COVID into the mix has been, an insane challenge, really. We started the development about 1.5 years ago, and then COVID obviously hit, so it made everything extremely difficult as the calendar and race locations were kind of turned upside down, and it was impossible to book things or move forward with all the uncertainty around travel. So like Lara said, I think, you just have to become super adaptable, and there's a great startup feel to Extreme E. We're a very small and mighty team, as I always say. So we keep the comms high between us. And, they're very TV broadcast inclusive, which is great because it's not event focused as other productions are. And we make sure we work closely and stay aligned. So I'm very fortunate in that sense.
Yeah.
One thing that did progress very well throughout lockdown is the kind of AR, VR, e-sport type graphics that you mentioned. That are actually filmed with a drone. So that's a world first that we've included drones in our live program. So we would have these kind of weekly calls with our technical partners, NEP, at the beginning of lockdown, and they were just incredible. I remember them showing us kind of the virtual graphics they'd produced or previously done, and I was just completely blown away by them. But we'd have my exec producer, my director, and the London Gallery producer on these weekly calls, which I actually don't think would have happened without lockdown, really, trying to get these 3 top people in a room together, and the nature of Zoom and Teams just worked really well in our favour. So we would kind of have these meetings and come up with ideas, which I'd be included in, and then debrief on the graphics that NEP were making. So yeah, it felt really good to be involved in the creative process from the start and kind of watch it grow. And yeah, to see the end product now, it's really, really something to be proud of.
It is. And did you stay in the UK, or were you over in like Senegal, Dubai?
Yeah, so I'm on location. So it's me and a junior production manager from the production team on site. And there's about 40 of us. And as I said, yeah, there's 30 people in our London gallery. But actually, we only create the race cut on site. So actually, everything's sent back to London, where our commentators are based, and we have all of our graphics that are put on. And again, just to see the fact that it goes back there, all of these things are added on, and then you can get it back to, you know, site in Senegal within 2 seconds. It's just blows my mind a bit.
It does. It's like magic, isn't it? It's like, how does it go so fast? I don't know. Really cool. Very, very cool. Okay, so don't forget to post questions for our speakers in the Q&A facility. Okay, so next question. This is one for all of you. What are the challenges of your job roles within motorsports, either technically or creatively? So we'll go around all of you, but, you know, what are the hardest things that you have to face on a regular basis? Starting with Abby.
I think it's a great question. I'll talk about Speedway just because I've come back to that, and that is I love what Wendy was saying about Champions League final at every single event. This is Monday nights on Eurosport, and it's so quick. They have 15 heats, and the heats are over in 60 seconds, and it's so loud. It's not quite Santa Pod loud, but it is still pretty hard to be hearing all the gallery instructions. And for me, it's not. And I actually agree with everything that's been said. It's trying to keep a calm head, as Lara said, so that you're still just slightly ahead of the envelope in terms of the editorial, because being back in that sport, there's a lot of rules and regulations. There's you have to be quick. It's meant my mental arithmetic has been really tested because everything's point based, and so actually just keeping the track of the score and tactical substitution and that point there, it's having all of that to hand, but not letting that consume me, so that I still know what is the stories of this meeting. Who do we care about from this particular event, where we are going to make sure that not just the ardent Speedway fan is going to tune in the next time. So we want to get those marginal viewers, and that's by caring about the people involved. So how can I be sure that I am still taking an overview of the program, so that there's a creative sort of license to go, we need to speak to this person, we need to tell this story, when actually sometimes you can just get so in there, right, what heat are we on? They've just got a 14+1, what did they score in the third heat? It just not getting so bogged down in the nitty gritty, but still knowing that, because that obviously is part of the evening's action. So I think just having that ability to remain calm in the face of all of your senses being in total overdrive. And so I think that would be one of the major sort of creative challenges. And sometimes then, say on something like WRC, if you're in the middle of a nowhere, when you lose connection, and so being calm again, so that you know that you can just fill, and you're not going, where do we go to next? You have still got an idea of the general format, so that you can dance in the moment where suddenly connection's gone down and you can't hear anything, and you're not being fed anything, and you haven't, as I said earlier, got the backup and the luxury of having a nice auto cue and a lovely studio environment. It's still just going, well, what is around me that I can tell the story of, so that I can bring the viewer who is passionate about these athletes and this sport into the environment that I'm lucky enough to be in. And that only comes when, it comes easier if I'm more relaxed and calm in the environment.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's just keep talking. Yeah, that's a lot of pressure as well. I don't know if I could do that as easily as you guys make it look. Definitely. Next to Claire, what about you? What are your challenges?
There are a few that come to mind. I mean, just trying to fit the size of the production into whatever space we have is one of them. Making sure that the camera operators are safe. I mean, our cars don't exactly make a lot of noise. It's very hard to know, they accelerate extremely quickly if you're, so we're using a lot of hot heads now to keep people safe. Juggling the sheer number of productions. We have our English language being produced remotely because we just can't fit it on site anymore. But then as well as that, you've got an international gallery, a sports press gallery, and a rights holder gallery. But I think the biggest one for me at the moment, it being a new role for me, is just trying to learn the sheer scope of the production technically. I don't think it's reached the point now where I don't think it's possible to know every tiny detail of the production. So when things do come up, it's about being quick, calm, reactive, really understanding the situation and then trying to fix the problem. We have so many caveats on site. It's fun.
It's fun. I like it. Everyone likes a challenge, don't they?
Exactly.
Not too many at once, though. Not too many at once. Jenny, what about you?
Yeah, again, I think each location that we go to on Extreme just has its own challenges, and things always pop up that you don't think about. Just to give some examples, when we were in Saudi Arabia, it was an absolutely stunning location, a bit like the Grand Canyon, with these giant rock faces that were like, multi-story buildings. And we didn't really think about that. Well, there was a problem with the RF signals, and some of our crew and camera people that were out on track didn't have radio comms. So it was just very difficult to keep them, safe in the heat all day when they were filming. Just making sure, crew welfare obviously is top of our list, as Lara always says. We've just got to make sure that we're looking after crew in these countries, because things always happen, whether it be tummy bugs or, other sicknesses. But yeah, and then Senegal, we had some buzzards that were attacking the drones that were in the sky. Awesome. They were just really intrigued by the drones and obviously just trying to go for them constantly, which is something you would just never think about would happen. So being adaptable and just working together really to solve the problem.
Yeah, I bet with a very, very expensive drone equipment with very expensive lenses and stuff. And what happened to it? Sorry, buzzard ate it.
They were curious. They were just kind of flying around it, but then started swooping some of the drones. So you can't write some of the things that come up.
No, you can't. I love it. And Wendy, what about you?
Yeah, I think in the current situation, it is everything with COVID and mitigating COVID situations and people's well-being, really. It's also there's also a big challenge in time management for everyone. And to be fair, I think every technical issue that presents itself, we can easily solve this, or we mitigate it and we try to put something else in place for the next race, for example. There's not so much of an issue on that front, but I think it's more like having the time to think ahead to the next race or 3 races ahead, and implementing the new things that we want to show to the crowd and to the viewers. I think that's our biggest challenge at the moment. And to be fair, like I said, COVID it doesn't really stop. Every day I get calls from our HR and health and safety department about people having to self-isolate in their hotel rooms, wherever they are. Currently we're in Austria. It's not an easy situation. We send our teams across the world. When they come back to the UK, they have to self-isolate. The only place they can go to is our office in MNTC, because we are part of this elite sports exemption, and our office is part of that exemption as well. So technically people can come into the office, but they can't stop at the supermarket, or they can't stop at the gas station to fill up their cars. They also can't see their parents or their children, and then 2 or 3 days later they're in a plane again. So I think people's well-being and welfare at the moment is our biggest challenge.
Yeah, it must be very hard, especially not being able to see family in between, because there isn't time between quarantining and having to leave again. That's really, really tough.
Yeah, the quarantine is harder than the event at the moment, because it's relentless. Yeah, definitely. I second that.
Yeah. I was talking to some people in Japan for the Olympics, and they were saying, it's one guy was saying we were in a tight hotel, and obviously Japan, the hotel rooms are tiny, but then they got moved to an apartment together, so they've got more space, but. Yeah, being stuck in the same four walls for 2 weeks must be not a very fun experience, especially when you could do so many other fun things instead, Okay, now this question is to everybody, so you're all welcome to answer this one. But as women working in motorsports, have any of you faced any raised eyebrows or prejudices or questions as to your competence or whether you are the right person they should be talking to in bringing this grease monkey sport to our screens? Who wants to start with that one? Volunteers. Claire.
Yeah, I don't mind. It's not really specific to motorsport. It's just the sports broadcasting industry that we're all in, I think. I'm a technical manager, so getting the guys to acknowledge, my role and that they've got to come to me with issues is always difficult in a new role. But definitely no slight on the production management team at all, but the amount of times I get mistaken for a production manager or a production coordinator because I'm female is staggering. And then the amount of times where you might get introduced as a technical manager and then a few minutes later in the same conversation someone is mansplaining to you how connectivity works or a camera works. I look forward to the day when that's not a regular occurrence.
Yeah, definitely. Anybody else?
Kind of similarly to Claire, I'm really lucky with the team that I work. I'm the only female on the senior management team in Formula E TV. But the guys that I work with are great. And actually, I don't feel like the only woman, even though I am, because there is no prejudice amongst that team. But when I first started, there was people who would come to me and ask questions and then, wouldn't take my answer and then go and ask one of the guys and get exactly the same answer. But, luckily I've been there, like I said, nearly 3 years. So now it doesn't happen so much, but it definitely did happen in the beginning that there was, questions going elsewhere because, she's a girl, she might not know the right answer.
Yeah. I'm as a journalist, I started out in mobile technology and telecoms journalism. And I used to, before COVID, I used to go to Mobile World Congress, big show over in Barcelona and before that in Cannes, every single year. And I think it was probably only about, not including COVID, probably about 2016 or something. I sat down with the CEO of a company to interview him and he explained to me what Wi-Fi was. And you're like, put the pen down, put the paper down, cross your arms, not writing a thing about this interview. No.
Yeah.
What about you, Abby?
Yeah, I think there's a mixture, and what I had to take ownership of myself as well, because when I was starting, particularly in certain disciplines, I made the mistake of which I learned very quickly of trying to be the expert, which then put me up for especially motorsport fans. They know so much. And there's so many forums and they will go on them and you will not know as much as them. And also I am buoyed by brilliant ex-champions as pundits. So it was learning that so I think it's a mixture. I think it was me trying to be like, I'm a woman and I own my voice and my presence in this space and look at all the research I've done, of which research is a massive part of what I love about the job. But allowing me to take ownership of the research and not the other way around, so that I didn't think I was there to prove, of which therefore I would sometimes fall short because I haven't raced on a MotoGP bike at 220 miles per hour around Mugello, so people next to me have. So it was about just offering it up and being comfortable enough to do less and getting more out of those around me. So I think there was something in me knowing what I was there to do so that I wasn't subject to to more criticism. So, and this is a part that I would also encourage productions to help their presenters with, because in some sports that can be pretty cruel. I can remember I used to come off air on MotoGP, and I loved the team. It was with North One, and you're on air for 4.5 hours doing MotoGP and Moto2 and Moto3, the feeder series, and you've given it your all, and you nervously put on your phone and look at Twitter. And now you can have the thicker skin, of which I don't, but I have developed thicker skin slightly. And you go, oh, you know, there can be some stuff that's quite hard to stomach. And I think there needs to be a little bit of support around that, especially when you start out, because it was tricky. It was really challenging. It was also challenging for my husband and my family to see that too, and to help them help me. It just needed a little bit of care around. But on the same token, now with Speedway, I think the confidence of which I've got, which somehow doesn't invite the criticism anymore, because I'm not trying to be there as an expert. And then the Speedway fans, again, they are ardent fans and know every single thing about their teams. They have been so welcoming to me into that sport. So I've had a lovely engagement with them on social media. But it's me then not taking validation from social media now that I feel that there is a lovely support network on there going, oh, look at people writing indirectly to me, that feels great. And then it can be just as horrible if they're not writing kind things. So it's me having a confidence within it. But teams and the actual athletes have been so welcoming. I've never felt that there's something I've needed to prove. It's probably something in my own head from what maybe tradition has been there and encouraged slightly, but also the social media aspect, particularly when you're in front of the camera, can be something that I think needs some help to learn how to manage.
Yes, yeah. And especially your point as well about your having to manage your family as well, because they start worrying, then you feel like you're dealing with the flack from social, but then you've got to somehow work out how to help them stop panicking and worrying about you.
Yeah.
So it's like both sides. Oh no. Cool. And anybody else got any comment on that one?
Yes, I'm happy to share an experience. Actually, I mentioned earlier that I had like an 8-month recruiting process coming into Formula One. It was quite a long journey. From the beginning, I knew that I was competing with 4 British men for this position. So first of all, coming from abroad was a bit of I had a little bit of a question mark about that as well. And but at no point during the recruitment process, I was ever under the impression that I would be less of a candidate than the other 4 British men. And every time I went into a call, in the beginning it was calls, and then I had to go to London a few times. But every time I did that, I was under the impression I was just the best person for the job. And I remember a day that I was at Gatwick waiting for my flight to go back to Amsterdam, that my dad called and he said like, oh, how did it go? And I said, well, actually it went really well. Yeah, it was all good. There was never any doubt in my mind. And I think what Abby just said, she's just said in our own heads. And I think this is a typical female thing. We in our own heads think sometimes that we are not living up to the challenge or not good enough for the role, but it is I don't think that is the fact. And I think we always need to attack things in a positive way. And having said this, last year I was in Monza driving my car to the track. And there's stewards, everyone knows that, you know. So I stepped out, parked the car on his direction, and I stepped out and he said, oh, you actually park better than a man. And I thanked him for the compliment. That was my instant reaction. I thanked him. I said, thanks for the compliment. And my passenger, my colleague, male colleague, he said when we walked up to the broadcast center, he said, Wendy, this was actually very sexist. And I said, well, yeah, could be, but I didn't attack it like that. To me, at that time, I took it as a positive comment. If I need to think about, oh yes, this could have been sexist, did he mean it like that? I really need to start a conversation with this person before I know what he really meant with that comment. It was probably nothing. And so for me, it was like water off a duck's back. I think that's the saying in England, isn't it? Yes. Yeah, exactly. So I just let it go, and I forget about it. Well, in this case, I didn't, because it was my colleague who pointed out that that he felt it different than I did at the time.
Yeah. The water off the duck's back thing is like, just, I guess, keep going and pick your fights when it's worth it. Because if you pick all of them, I guess you'll end up a bit scrappy and raggedy.
Yes, and go in there with a positive attitude. I think that's half the battle.
Concentrate on your job and being professional and ignore little things. Cool. Okay. Well, we have a question from the audience from Jenny Fuller at Formula E. Hi, Jenny. She asks, what positive and proactive steps can the motorsports broadcast industry take to open the door and then support leadership progression for women? Who would like to take that one? Volunteers. Abby?
I'll take that one. I when I started at Formula E, we had a real lack of people, of women in certain positions. So I think proactively actually going and searching for it until there is a day where it's a 50-50 split, or it isn't even a question. Right now, that there is we've had, there's been comments in the past from crew, oh, you're just getting women in, to get your numbers up, and they might not be as good at the job and stuff. But, I argue with that, and I say we've got to proactively go and search. We have to go and find the female engineers. We have to go and find, the people that are out there. And if there isn't people out there, then we need to support people in mentoring programs and progression. I've just taken on 2 students from my old university that I'm going to mentor. They're in their 3rd year, both women and both interested in broadcasting, and give them and tell them that there are opportunities out there. So yeah, actively go and search for the people for those roles. And if they don't exist, then we need to be mentoring them and bringing them up ourselves.
Yeah, cool. So it takes us as individuals to go and do something.
I think so. I really do. Obviously with the support of the motorsport industry, and, as I mentioned earlier, Jenny and Seb are very supportive of, Formula E itself is 50-50. Aurora, and Formula E TV is 50, with Aurora with 50-50. But it's not like that across the whole industry. And we certainly know from the engineering point of view, it's nowhere near 50-50. I had a conversation recently, Heather, which I know we were chatting about yesterday. We were in Mexico, and we had a RACS engineer who was a female, and we were like, wow, we've got a female RACS engineer. And she told me about a Facebook group that exists in the US, which is Women in Sports Broadcasting, Broads in Broadcasting. And I was like, that's brilliant. There's like 380 people in it. And it came about because there was a crew of over 100 people, and there were 10 women on the crew, and the crew was so excited that they were 10%, that they went and got drunk and then created this Facebook group for women in sports broadcasting. And I thought, you know what, there must be one for the UK and Europe as well. There isn't, it doesn't exist. So in Mexico, we created one. So we now have a Facebook group, if anyone wants to join it, which is Women in Sports Television, UK and Europe.
Call it Broads in Broadcast now.
We because we wanted to sister up with the American version, Broads in Broadcasting in brackets. Obviously, that's more of an American term. Cool. But it's important to support each other and, bring each other in. Definitely.
What's it called again?
It's called Women in Sports Television, UK and Europe. You'll find it on Facebook.
I will join immediately after this call. Does anybody else want to comment on that one?
The women we do have in the industry, we need to sort of talk to the people we have to really find out what drives them, why they're in it, and how they got into it, and keep people who are already in position. So we have to support each other and make sure that we aren't struggling as the women on the tour. I think also I really try not to think of myself as the woman in engineering. I just want to be one of the team. And that's really important too. But I think it starts even earlier. I think it's really important to present those options. I go back to my old school, which was a girls' school, and try and educate the girls there about the roles that are available in television, because a lot of people just don't see that as an option. And until you've got women being presented as, oh, you can do this as well, kind of thing. Like, there's been a big drive for that in sort of medicine and the military and in general engineering. There's some really good groups out there presenting the case to girls and young women who are making those choices for the first time. But broadcast can be a bit of a niche industry. So making sure that we're out there presenting this as an option, as an industry, then things won't change. So it's really important that we keep doing that.
Absolutely, yes. And maybe that's something we can do more of at SVG Europe as well, like help people, support people somehow to go back. And it's very hard to do. It's very hard to work out how to do it. But it's say, everybody, go home, go back to your schools and tell the girls what the jobs are in broadcasting, because a lot of people don't have a clue what these roles are. Like, we see Abby on the screen, so we know there's a presenter. We know there must be someone operating a camera, but all the rest of it is kind of, you just don't know it exists unless you ask the question. So great. So let's finish up with one more question from me. So what would you give as your top tip or two to anyone looking to get into your job role in motorsports? Who would like to have a go at that one? What's your top tips? What top tips for budding presenters, Abby?
It's a great question. I'm like, oh, Heather, give me 2 minutes to get my two top tips. What would I say my top tips for motorsport? Oh goodness, it feels such a TV presenting thing to be yourself, but I think a lot of what has come out of this is to be really confident in your own voice. So if you are presenting already and you've done it in other genres, then know that it actually can transfer into sport, and there's just a little bit more sort of adaptability that you need to have with it, because as we know, things can be MMA, a fight can be over in 2 seconds. But I think it is be strong with your voice at the table and not apologetic. And then that's, oh goodness, it's, that can take years to develop. And there's something about speaking to a camera which isn't natural to begin with as much as we want it to be. So the more that you can use this luxury of the amount of calls that you're doing on Zoom, it's all practice, isn't it? It's all practice of what is my voice and what is my authentic voice, so that you can keep practicing that skill so that you've got it available to you more readily in a high pressure moment. So that was a long-winded saying of that you are enough as you are, and just to go forth with clarity and energy for what you want to do. But I want a second top tip. Second top tip is it's just you know what, this is an easier thing, either said thing that I can write and say, but it's also, you've got to go and practice it. It's just to enjoy it, because people love it. We don't care when a presenter makes a mistake on camera. We really don't care if they are enjoying it and loving it, because we are then taken by the passion. If they then look horrified at the mistake, that's when all the Twitter warriors can come forward. So I think it's the more passionate you can be, that you are there as that conduit between the fan and the sport, the more that you take the pressure off you and make it about what you can give to the audience. So weirdly, as a presenter, the less you make it about yourself, the more that you are going to enjoy it and be able to give more to the viewer.
Thank you. That's great. That's excellent. I like that. Jenny, you've been quiet for a while. What are your top tips?
A tricky one. I would say immerse yourself in kind of all the areas within production. As a production manager, you need to have an understanding of everything. And I think that's really important, whether you as a runner are doing everything you can to get an oversight on edits and post-production, and be on location, on shoots, and even being in the office and helping with all the kind of every part you can, joining meetings, and
disconnected.
It's a case of just sitting in a meeting and listening in. I think that's when all the things start to come together, and you start to piece together how a production's put together, and just get the full picture.
Brilliant.
That would be my top tip.
I like that one. I like it. Any other top tips?
I'd say like take every opportunity to learn. The more strings you have to your bow, the better. And as Jenny said, like, you know, learning as much about other areas of production is so valuable. But also, like, other industries have lots to offer. So learning about social media, learning about marketing, you know, really going for it with your CV and cover letters. You know, every allied skill that you can get is going to be valuable to you in a job like ours.
Cool. And Lara, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, be comfortable in your own skin, and you're never going to know everything. Rely on the people around you to have, you know, the technical side covered off. Or, one of my biggest things when I first started in Formula E was that I felt like I should have the answers to every single question that was asked of me. And quite often you'll be asked questions that aren't necessarily, you don't need to know the answers. You've got a team around you. You know, we have, 130 people on our team. And so someone is going to know the answer, but it's having the confidence to say to someone, actually, I don't have that answer, but I know someone that does. Come with me and we'll go and find that engineer or that, or that person that has those answers. And don't beat yourself up when you don't know everything, because you will never know everything about motorsport. It's not possible. And there will be people that know far more than you, and just having the confidence to say, I don't know, but I'll get you the answer.
Yeah, know when to defer. Yeah, I like it. And anything from you, Wendy? Last one.
I think it's important to stay positive, to have a positive attitude and a positive view towards every challenge that comes on your path. And I always say to people in my team who struggle sometimes, come to see me, and I tell them, listen, a mouse can eat an elephant as long as it takes these very, very tiny bites. And I think building you build your career, you give it 100%, you give the best performance of and be the best person you can be. You try to be good at what you do, and you slowly build on a career, and you just follow, if your dream is in motorsports, then follow that dream and try to speak to people. I think networking is really important as well. Don't be afraid to reach out to people like us even, we're on LinkedIn. Send us a message.
Definitely. Cool. And I think that might be the quote of the session. A mouse can eat an elephant as long as it takes tiny bites. On that excellent bombshell, which I love. Thank you so much to my speakers. You've all been absolutely fantastic. Thank you to the audience for coming along. Obviously, this is going to be on demand as well, so we'll get it ready for you tomorrow, hopefully. If you have any further questions for our speakers that you haven't put forward, please feel free to email me and I will forward them on to them so they can reply when they get a bit of time in between races. This afternoon, we have the SVG Motorsport show, which is going to feature Formula One, Extreme E, more from Formula E, plus MotoGP, Fox Sports and pure ETCR. There's a big sustainability thread going on as well. So it's going to be really interesting. I hope to see some of you there as well. As I said earlier, if you haven't registered, registration is closed, but just email me as soon as you can after we get off here and I'll get you in. When you log off, you'll find a very short questionnaire in your inbox. So please go and answer that for me so we can I can get some feedback and make these events more about what you're interested in and what you would like to see. Keep an eye out on information for our next event, which might be next month, and hopefully see you very soon. Stay in touch, and until next time, everybody, goodbye.